Hi, welcome to this video for D100 Dungeon. In this video we're going to make a game tracker for our games. It's available from Drive-Thru RPG as a print and play file, as well as from the Game Cratfer where you can get it printed to a mat. But if you're using the print and play, this is a way of printing it up and being able to get yourself something near to the printed mat. So the first thing to be aware of is the size of the document. The document has been made as a ledger tabloid size, which is 17 inches by 11 inches, and but that's also very similar to an A3 page, which is of similar proportions. So if you happen to have an A3 printer, you're good to go. You can print it directly to a single page and use these cutout lines. If you haven't got access to an A3 printer and you want to print it on an A4 printer, then there's a few settings that you need to make and put in place via the printer. So by printing on two A4 pages, what we'll do is we'll be printing one half here and one half to another page. And the way we do that is to go into print settings, and we're going to select shrink oversized pages. We're going to tell it to print page 2. You'll need to replicate this when you're printing up these little crystals, so you just go through the same process for page 1 as page 2, but for our demonstrations we're going to do a page 2, which is the actual game tracker itself. And then we need to hit properties. So I would recommend, until you've got all these properties set for your printer correctly, that you print on on a draft and in grayscale to use as little ink as you possibly can. When you've got it all set and you're happy that it's going to print correctly, then obviously use a good quality paper and select a color print and a high quality setting. But so for now, what we're going to do is we need to tell the printer to print landscape, and we need to select 2x1 poster print, and this is going to vary quite a bit depending on your printer that you're using. I'm using an Epson XP 8500 series, but most printers will have similar features where you can set these options up. So if you haven't got a printer that will deal with this for you, you can use these options within your PDF reader. So there's a poster option there that you can use to manipulate the way you're going to print across pages. We're going to use the printer driver in this demonstration. So let's set that. So we got that set to 2x1 poster, and that's going to print up one half of it on one page and the other half on the other page. You can see different options do different things. By using that little picture as a guide, you can see exactly how it's going to be printing out. So we're going to go 2x1 poster and then hit settings. There's a couple of settings on here that we need to check. One of them is print cutting lines, and we need to set it to overlap align marks, and that'll become apparent when we go down to the table and we start making up the actual board itself. So I'll discuss that when we get to that point, but check that, and then that will give you the right setting. And then, like I say, print it on draft first, make sure it prints all correctly and it's going to print okay on your paper. And then you want to print it to an A4 label sheet, a complete sheet of A4 labels, and then you're good to go. So landscape, set your qualities, set it to 2x1 poster print, set your overlapping alignment marks, and then you're ready to click OK and then print. So what I'll do, I'll get these printed off, 2 pages printed off, and then we'll go down the table and have a look at how to construct it into a board. So I'll just go over a few things now at the table with the document and how we set it up to print. So we told it to print with an overlap, and by doing that it puts this little icon here on the page. which allows us to move this position here over, and it also gives us a duplicate line. If you can see, we've got 6 and 6 showing up there, so when we actually make the document, it's meant to actually overlap, and so we need to be aware of that for our cutting. It also, because I was printing to an A4 label that you can peel off and stick down, the label doesn't extend to the very edge of the paper, and so what would happen is if you didn't do that setting, it shifts that image over past the actual peel line of the paper, and so by setting the printer to print, we can move that image over enough so that we're able to get the whole of that graphics in the print in the label area of the media that we're using. If you've got paper where there is no the label goes right to the extreme edges of the size of the paper you're using, you've got no issues there. Demonstrate with this one, which I've set with print lines. You can see that that's where we would need to trim the paper, and that's where the actual label starts, so you would actually lose part of the label's image, if that makes sense. So that's why we've set that up. I've already trimmed the top of this paper off, so it would have had the print document on. I've done that so that I can fix these sheets that I've printed off, which are printed on full-size label sheets, onto a mounting board. So these mounting boards are featured in another video that I did for counters. They come in different sizes. You can get them up to A2, A3 pages, sheets. It's about 2mm thick, and it's used in the picture framing industry. It's called mounting board. The picture framers would cut out a window, put the picture behind it, and then put that into a frame for like a finished framed piece of art or photograph. So you can get this from hobby craft shops, art supplies and so forth. And the paper media that I used was these, just very cheap full-size label sheets, multi-purpose labels, just printed off, and that gives us the adhesive to stick it to this mounting board. And it's really just a case of sticking them on in such a way that the image completes onto one piece. So what we're going to do is we're going to do some trimming now. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just trim these bottom edges off so that it fits my board. Let me do that. I'll cut them both off. Not too worried about where they're cut, it's just for aligning the pages. And so now we can see where they're going to fit that way on our board. Okay, the next thing is I'll just go through what I'm using. I'm using a steel rule and an ordinary bladed knife. Use a sharp, make sure it's sharp so it's safe to cut with. Steel rule so that any cuts that you make aren't cutting into your ruler, and when you're cutting, hold it down firmly and just keep your knife upright. Don't cut like that, because if you cut like that the edge of the board will be tapered, so keep it nice and upright and then just run through, putting a decent amount of pressure as you cut. So, but first off we're going to trim these to size, so we're going to work on these edges first, that edge there and that edge there, and we can see that we've lost slightly part of the 6 but we've gained it on this image. So what we're going to do is we're going to trim that along that 6 line, and we're going to make sure that we don't leave any white of the paper when we cut through. So we've left as much of the image that we can on the paper, but we've taken away just a little edge of the ink line there. So now we've got a nice clear edge, and now we need to work out where we're going to cut it on this paper here. So it's a case of lining it up over the paper until you get a nice firm, a nice guaranteed line. And we can see that where we've cut it, we've actually, that's going to be a good place to actually cut. So using a very small pencil, very fine pencil, once you're happy with the position of where you're going to cut, put a little line there and a little line there, and that's where we're going to chop through. So now the next bit is to line up those as good as you can and leave some of that line on. So you want to make your pencil line invisible at this point, and then just slice through. And now we've got two edges that when put together will make up your board. Okay, so the next thing is to go ahead, just check that it looks all okay, and that you don't want to take any more off. When they're put together, they don't look too bad. They might be just slightly larger there, but there's no problem with the actual the writing on the letter, on the numbers. And so now what we do is we choose a side of our board. I'm going to stick it to the white side. Slight bit of bowing in the board, so we'll just get some of that bow out. And just peel your first one, just peel your label off and stick it to one half of the board. So starting from the top, place your sheet on the paper, just smooth it off as you go down. And then when it's near enough all there, run your finger along where the joint is, and using the back of the paper you can smooth it out. Give it a good smooth out. Okay, next thing we're going to do is stick the other half on. So, and this will be the most trickiest point of the operation, is to just line them up. So peel off the backing paper and then begin lining up the two halves. So we started off in this top corner here, and we're just going along the joint, just making sure that it all goes together fairly well, and then just run your finger along the joint and gradually it vanishes. And then just going down your page like we did before, smoothing the rest of the document out. Got a few air bubbles there, just press them out as you go. Okay, get your paper, give it a good smooth out. Run your nail along the joint, just iron out any little imperfections, and you end up with a fairly reasonable time game tracker. So next thing we're going to do is just going to remove these cut lines just to neaten it up.
you can see that along the edge there's just a fine cut line all the way around. So what we're going to do is just trim it up. And there we have a nice game tracker. Okay, so the last thing that you could probably do is, now that you've got your actual tracker in one piece, is to just seal it with a craft sealer, and this will just make sure that all the ink doesn't will just seal all the ink to the paper and so forth. So take this into the garden or the garage and just give it a quick spray, just to seal over all your ink. And then for the counters that you use for tracking, you just go through exactly the same process. Just print it to some of your offcuts, just print it off onto sticky paper and just stick it to the offcuts, and you can cut out all your small little counters to use for tracking all the different elements on the game tracker. The official game tracker is slightly bigger. This is the one that you can get from the Game Cratfer website, and it comes with these small little crystals, which if you had access to these crystals, you can buy these, you could use these on this game tracker as well. So if you can get them independently, you can use them. So there we are. Thanks for watching.